Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. The saint's dimension journey. When the wind and jade stand tall, the water shines on the flowers, and the golden hair flutters under the two trees, Shajia listens to the silver bell-like laughter in her ears and looks at the charming beauties one by one. Suddenly, she understands that being together for a lifetime is the sublimation and ultimate of love. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1, I Shaga. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Where is this? Ah Shao, who was originally standing at the stake in the park at midnight, suddenly regained consciousness from his martial arts realm and realized that he was not in the original park. Looking around, it seemed to be a dilapidated temple, and it was also a Western-style ancient temple. Looking at the Buddha statue in front of him, which was almost 5 or 6 meters high, Shao thought to himself. It seems like he has seen it somewhere before. This is the kingdom of Taigua. Or India. Shajia, what are you confused about? Suddenly, a voice reached Ah Zhao's ear, and he was surprised to find that the sound seemed to come from a Buddha statue. Wait, he called me. Shaga. Where's Sagittarius Shaga? Have I traveled? Suddenly, Ah Shao reacted and looked at himself. He found that his body had turned into a 2-year-old child. This body seemed to not be able to walk yet, and his clothes were just wrapped in simple cloth. His mind withdrew and he looked inside. Seeing his own appearance, Shao realized that although he looked similar to his childhood appearance, his hair was no longer black, but had changed to gold. How could this be possible? Ah Shao was extremely surprised in his heart. Ah Shao, who graduated from high school at the age of 18, took a year to self-study and obtain a bachelor's degree before entering the provincial television station to work. It seems that he did not have much outstanding performance, but what really stands out is that Ah Shao himself is a descendant of an ancient martial arts sect and one of the few dark powerhouses in China who is in the stage of refining and transforming gods. I felt a slight headache, and my destiny opened up, recalling the process of things. Originally, when Ah Shao was standing at the stake, he happened to encounter a rare meteor shower in 70 years. He was practicing in a state of unity between heaven and humanity, and his flesh was assimilated into the primordial spirit by the surging energy of heaven and earth. With the stimulation of the meteor shower and the primordial energy of heaven and earth, Ah Zhao's body was assimilated into the primordial spirit. The primordial spirit will also be assimilated into emptiness by Ah Shao, who is driven by his survival instinct to escape into a temporal and spatial crack and descend on Shajia, who is also in a state of unity between heaven and humanity and has only been born for a few months. Due to the strong vitality wrapped in the elemental spirit of Ah Shao, the young and unprepared soul of Shajia was directly assimilated into Ah Shao's elemental spirit. It can be said that Ah Shao today is Shajia. But due to Shajia's young age, his pure soul did not have much memory, and everything was taken over by Ah Shao. Buddha, teach me how to practice. To understand everything, Ah Shao calmly accepted reality. Shajia should be Shajia. Anyway, during his student days, he was jokingly called Shajia by his classmates because of his appearance. Maybe he could return to his original world after practicing well. Well, in this world, I am Shajia. Shajia, what do you want to learn? Buddha said. I want to learn how to regulate myself and others, protect myself and subdue demons, said Shaga. So. The Buddha's voice seemed somewhat relieved. Time is like the quicksand of the Ganges, always flowing unconsciously. 3 years have passed, and during these 3 years, Shaga has combined ancient martial arts from his past life with the teachings of Buddha. He quickly comprehended the small universe of the 7th sense peak, even the 8th sense Alaya seems to. People have the 6 senses of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. In the ancient martial arts techniques of the past, the 5 senses are absorbed and absorbed. By using the sixth sense consciousness, also known as consciousness, one can perceive qi. It seems that under the laws of this world, qi has become a microcosm, and the so-called eighth sense alaya is essentially what was said in the ancient martial arts techniques of the past, the Yin God of human beings, also known as the true self. So, as long as one cultivates to the stage of Yang God, the so-called ninth sense, the consciousness of God, is also like this. Shajia smiled at the corners of her mouth and silently thought, well, this body is almost 6 years old at the age of 5. So, in the original work, Shajia became a golden saint at the age of 7, and time is almost up. It's time to go out, holy domain. I'm here. Buddha, it seems like something is calling me. Silently sensing the resonance in the direction of the holy domain, Shajia said to the Buddha statue. Shajia, there is a destiny in the world, and the same goes for you. Go, Shajia, find your own destiny. The voice of the Buddha seems to be still indifferent and profound. Shaga, no matter what kind of situation you may encounter in the future, you must recognize yourself, whether it is disaster or death. Don't forget. Nothing will be the ultimate end, the end is just another beginning. Don't forget. Alaya. Understand it, although you are human, you will become the closest person to God. As Shajia went out, the voice of the Buddha finally rang in Shajia's ear. The person closest to God is really amazing. Shajia said in her heart, but her tone was calm with a hint of disdainful. Perhaps. I don't plan to go directly to Saga in the Holy Land, close my eyes, walk slowly like an ordinary person, and observe the world with my heart. Suddenly, Shajia opened her eyes and smiled, saying, it seems like there's no difference from the past life, just as ordinary, just as busy. If it weren't for the conversation with Buddha just now, I would really doubt whether there is a God in this world. Hee. No, this place is different from the past, the people here. More. It makes people despise and nauseous. God is the same. Feeling several repulsive small universes appearing in the distance, filled with desire, hope, killing, and lust evil. Closing her eyes again, Shajia silently thought and then faced in that direction, gently waving her hand and whispering. The sky is filled with demons and monsters. The small universe, which had been hidden all along, burned lightly inside her body and then hid again. Shaga turned around and left as if nothing had happened. However, several unknown individuals in the distance who were doing evil suddenly froze their bodies, each with a frightened expression, and then turned into flying ash. In the Holy Realm, Pope Theon suddenly looked up and said, is it an illusion? Immediately, I saw 11 boxes placed in the Imperial Palace, with the Libra holy clothes in the Tomhu area. In one of them, the box of the Virgo suddenly shone brightly, and inside it seemed to emit a light cry of joy. It's not an illusion, a new warrior has been born. Is it a female zodiac sign? Mount Lu, the 5 old peaks, suddenly spoke up to Tong Hu, who had been sitting still facing the waterfall, is a new era coming. However, with a joyful tone, there was an immensely heavy tone. However, Shaga was unaware of all this. At this moment, Shaga was helping a village with corpses scattered everywhere due to an unknown disaster to transcend. He gently raised his arm wrapped around the prayer beads and murmured softly, the demon has subdued. Behind Shajia appeared a beautiful phantom riding a white horse, draped in gauze, with long hair floating. Immediately, an infinite radiance bloomed from Shajia's body, and the earth seemed to respond to Shajia. Infinite golden light rose from the ground, and all the hideous deceased appeared calm again, as if they had entered a dreamland. Dust returns to dust, soil returns to soil, soul returns to earth. Go. With the sound of Shaga, all the corpses turned into dust, and infinite vitality seemed to rise on the ground. Flowers and plants grew again, and in the blink of an eye, this place was no longer the Shura field, but the Garden of Eden. Is it the goddess of spring? Seeing this scene, Shaga seemed to think of the myth of the constellation Virgo and sneered in her heart. Compared to the dirty Greek mythology, I agree more that the blue dragon in the eastern star is the source of the power of the constellation Virgo. However, isn't the constellation Virgo the horn of the blue dragon? Hee, does Emu live forever? Hee. Seemingly thinking of something happy, Shajia, who still closed her eyes and walked lightly, her steps became a bit cheerful. On that day, Shajia suddenly heard a sound of the piano, beautiful yet full of indifference and hidden sorrow and longing. Driven by curiosity, Shaga followed the sound and arrived at a peaceful castle that seemed to be a noble family. This family seems to have just gotten married, and everything around them seems to be emitting joy, but Shajia frowned slightly. The young woman who was pregnant seemed to have an unusual fetus in her womb, with a dark yet exceptionally pure universe that was devoid of evil thoughts or killing intent. Instead, what emerged was an imperceptible sadness. I don't seem to want to be born just like. Shajia shook her head lightly and arrived at the back mountain of the house. The sound of the cheen was heard, and she saw a 7-stringed harp standing over 2 meters high in a deserted room. A beautiful woman with black hair and a long black dress was sitting by the harp, her jade hands gently plucking. Is this woman a soul? Shajia felt something unusual, opened his eyes, looked at the woman, and then whispered, Pandora. Pandora lifted her head and looked toward Shaga, saying curiously, how can ordinary children see me? Do they even know my name? Shaga closed her eyes and smiled, saying to Pandora, there's nothing strange, I can always see the soul. I've seen your portrait in some mythological books, and it's a bit similar, so I just asked. I immediately found a chair to sit down and listen to Pandora's piano sound. Unconsciously, an hour passed and Pandora stopped playing the piano. She stood up and came to Shaga, who was still a child. Looking at Shaga, she chuckled softly. You know I'm Pandora, aren't you afraid? You know, I'm the witch Pandora who spreads disasters. With a self-deprecating voice that carried a hint of melancholy, Shaga opened her eyes, her pure eyes emitting a deep light. Looking at Pandora's beautiful face, Shaga shook her head and said, it is not Pandora who spreads disaster and pain to humanity, but Pandora who preserves hope for humanity. Speaking, a small universe full of pity and compassion emanated from her body. She reached out and gently stroked Pandora's eyebrows, as if this could sweep away Pandora's sadness. Chapter 2. Pandora. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pandora looked at Saga with some surprise. Small universe. Are you a saint? Saints. No, it's not. Shajia said softly, but she thought to herself. I'm not lying, I'm really not a saint right now. Pandora listened and seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. She didn't want this child to become her enemy and get involved in the game of the gods. Pandora said to Shaga, child, what's your name? Shajia, my name is Shajia. Originally, I didn't have a name, but many people said I looked like Buddha, so I followed the example of Shakyamuni and called myself Shajia. Shajia replied casually. Shajia. This name is very strange, do you want to become a Buddha? Pandora, who seemed to have thought of something, asked Saga. I don't want to, Shajia. It's just a casual way of calling me, it's convenient for others to call me. If you don't like it, help me think of something else, Shajia said casually. Pandora looked at Shaga and pondered for a moment before saying, so. How is Ashimada? Ashimada. Cayman. It doesn't sound good, this name is too strange. Shajia complained softly, but she thought to herself, is it a test? Use the name of the female zodiac sign from the previous generation. Upon hearing Shajia's complaint, Pandora breathed a sigh of relief and then smiled, saying, Shajia sounds better. You don't need to change it anymore. Even if you save time, you won't get used to it. Shajia nodded lightly. So, Shajia stayed with Pandora's spirit in the castle, listening to her piano every day and occasionally humming a few popular songs from her past life for Pandora to play. There seemed to be some inexplicable friendship between the two. Pandora also had a great fondness for the child who accompanied her while Hades was sleeping. Although neither of them was talkative, a warm current unconsciously rose in Pandora's lonely heart. The days passed peacefully, and without realizing it, Pandora's smile never disappeared after encountering Shaga. If I had been living like this all along, perhaps my heart would have been healed by this child. Unfortunately, I am not a human, nor am I one of those women in the mortal world who are sad about certain things. What saddens me is that this destiny will never end. Thinking to herself, Pandora's stunning smile was adorned with a few traces of tears. "Pandora sister, are you okay?" Shajia gently asked as she reached out and brushed Pandora's cheek, helping her dry her tears. "Hee, sister's okay." Pandora heard Shajia's voice, her sadness seemed to be diluted by the warmth in her heart. She reached out and hugged Shajia in her arms. More than 9 months had passed without realizing it, and today Pandora did not play the piano. Instead, she held Shaga in her arms and after a gentle intimacy, she said to Shaga, "Brother, sister is going to be reincarnated. Promise to leave here quickly after sister leaves, and if possible, never come back here." Speaking, the voice was filled with endless sadness. Shajia looked at Pandora in a daze and only spoke after a while, "Pandora sister. I promise you. Good brother, it's not my sister who drove you away, but my sister is Pandora. After reincarnation, Pandora will open her magic box again, and this will become the real Hades city, which is the mortal realm." Pandora sobbed as she hugged Shaga. "On the day my sister's reincarnation, I left. However, before that, I want to give her a gift so that even if I'm gone, it can still replace me and be with her forever." As she said this, Sacca reached out and pressed her hand on Pandora's heart, sending a pure vitality of heaven and earth into Pandora's body. She ran along a special route, attracting the essence of heaven and earth to nourish Pandora's spirit all the time. Pandora suddenly felt warm, calm and clear, as if all troubles had been swept away. Pandora felt herself and asked Shaga in surprise, "Brother, this is?" Tianyuan-ju is one of the health cultivation methods of the distant eastern mysterious ancient country's heavenly dynasty. As long as you plant a seed, you can cultivate it on your own. Although it doesn't have much power, it can continuously nourish your sister's divine soul and repair her injuries. This seed will accompany my sister from now on until I become stronger than God, I will save my sister. However, Shajia did not say this sentence, and the Tianyuan Jew was not as light-hearted as Shajia said. The heavenly Yuan technique, also known as the upper Qing mixed Yuan innate supreme and light and dust heart technique, can continuously strengthen the elemental spirit unconsciously, and has a hidden function that no one can perceive its cultivation level. It can be said that Pandora's cultivation will continue to grow in the future, but others can only perceive her previous state of cultivation. However, these things are quietly sealed in Pandora's sea of consciousness by Shajia, and gradually become known as Pandora's cultivation improves. This is also to prevent Pandora from appearing unnatural in front of the gods and causing suspicion. Shaga and Pandora remained as usual, but they remained even more intimate together. Finally, the day of Pandora's reincarnation was approaching, and Pandora hugged Shaga and said, "Brother, promise sister to leave here, and never become a saint, never get involved in this vortex, go to the east, go to the country called the God-forbidden zone, in the heavenly kingdom. Live a peaceful life there." "No, Sister Pandora, I never wanted to be any saint of Athena because there was no reason, but now I have found it. For my sister's sake, I want to be a saint, I want to become stronger." As she spoke, Shajia hugged Pandora, hiding the microcosm within the range that only Pandora could perceive and elevating it to the limit. The eighth sense was approaching its peak, and the peak of the microcosm left Pandora feeling extremely shocked. My little universe was only the seventh sense before I met my sister, but since I met her, it has been constantly improving. In no time, I will reach the peak of the eighth sense. At first, I didn't understand, but now I have found a reason because Pandora is my goddess. In the future, if I cannot save Pandora, I will go to the underworld to be a fighter to accompany her. Shajia said firmly in Pandora's ear, then looked at Pandora, who was shocked and moved again. Shajia's body gently floated up, gently kissed Pandora's lips, and then said, "Sister, wait for me." Pandora was moved and held on to Sacca for a long time without saying a word. As dawn approached, Pandora's figure gradually faded away. She lowered her head and kissed Shaga's forehead, whispering, "Goodbye, brother." Then it turned into a black starlight and flew towards the castle in front of the mountain. A burst of baby cries came, and Shaga silently said, "Goodbye, Sister Pandora." Then the body also turned into golden light and flew towards the holy realm. Along the way, Shajia silently recalled the time spent with Pandora. Although Shajia had no plans to have anything with Pandora in the early days, emotions were not something that could have happened without them. Shaga, who originally had a youthful mentality, gradually fell in love with this elegant and melancholic, strong and fragile woman after spending time with Pandora day and night. Perhaps as Shaga said, Pandora is his goddess, maybe. Heavenly Tsongyun sword slash. Suddenly, a sharp sword aura attacked Shajia, and Shajia's handprint lightly nodded, whispering, "Don't move the Ming King." In an instant, the golden hemisphere resembling the 8 trigrams palm enveloped Shaga, doubling all attacks and returning them. Damn it. With a muffled hum, accompanied by a shout of abuse, one dressed in a black snake-shaped holy robe, holding a long sword in his hand, and covering his abdomen that had been hit by a rebound with the other hand, his face was fierce, and he said arrogantly, "Damn mortal, who are you? How dare you hurt this great deity, the man who needs assistance? Susa's son. That's Japanese trash." Shajia looked at the man in front of him who claimed to be a deity, Susa Jinan, a third-rate mythological scumbag. He killed a scumbag monster without any form and pretended to be a god. It really doesn't matter, but the scumbag god in this garbage country can let me vent my anger and displeasure at parting with Pandora's sister a bit. After thinking about it, Shaga suddenly came to Suzo now and slapped his injured abdomen, followed by another slap on the opponent's face. Suzo now was instantly fixed in the air, and then his body twisted irregularly and fell to the ground. Shaga made it a simplified throwing technique of the heavenly dance wheel. However, looking at the man who was lying on the ground, Shajia didn't want to let him go like this. He used the blood refining and revitalization technique, which combines the small universe and ancient martial arts techniques of the past, to refine the blood and bone marrow of the man into pure elemental energy and infuse it into himself. He didn't even let go of the divine soul in the man's holy robe. Looking at the man of Susa, who had turned into ashes, I looked at his slightly damaged holy robe. Without the blessing of the divine soul, it was only some good materials. However, the sword attracted Shaga, and its shape was not too gorgeous. The sword body was not very long, wide, and had no sharp edges. Rather than being a sword, it was more like the skeleton of a monster. It's actually a good collectible. The armor can be refined into raw materials and used as gifts. It's also made of refining materials such as silver star sand that have been refined with divine blood, combined with this monster skeleton. It can be said to be a grass shaving sword, but it can still be used to refine a good piece of equipment. Shajia, who had made up his mind to pay attention, began to use the small universe to melt the holy clothes of Susanoo. After removing some harmful substances to the human body, he refined them into pieces of ore, opened up a ring space, collected the ore and the grass shaving sword, and began to slowly walk towards the holy domain to vent his frustration. After a while, Shajia resumed his journey to see the world in his mind, and he was not so eager to go to the holy domain anymore. However, Saga was not in a hurry, but Pope Leon began to be anxious because all the golden saints from other constellations had arrived, and the first place that resonated with the holy clothes. The female candidate had yet to arrive. The Pope observed through astrology and found that the light in the constellation Virgo only occasionally shone 10 months ago, but has never bloomed in the past 10 months. Compared with other zodiac signs, it can be said to be dim. Suddenly, the Pope sensed an evil small universe suddenly magnifying, and the small universe of Virgo ignited at the same time. However, the two small universes collided for a few seconds and disappeared at the same time. Pope Leon immediately hinted that something was wrong. This evil little universe is about the seventh sense of high order, so I'm afraid there might be danger for the female zodiac sign. Then he rushed out of the papal palace and said to the door, "Go notify Sacca and search for the female candidate in the southwest direction. On the way, if you encounter the evil universe just now, get rid of him." Pope Shaun has great confidence in the strength of Sacca. Although he is young, he has already comprehended the small universe of the mid-seventh sense, and with the Gemini golden cloak, it is not a problem to eliminate a high-level seventh sense evil god. Sacca gladly accepted the order, but Garonne also requested to go with him, saying that he wanted to help Sacca. Pope Leon thought for a moment before agreeing, asking Sacca to wear the golden holy coat and handing over the altarpiece holy coat to Garonne for self-defense. Although they didn't care much, Garonne and Sacca were still somewhat moved by the Pope's actions. However, the two still complained that the Pope underestimated their strength, but it was just some. Chapter 3. Gemini, Sacca and Garonne. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sacca and Garonne rushed in the direction guided by the Pope, and soon arrived at the place where Sacca and Susanabu had just fought. Isn't that right? The candidate from the female seat won't be killed, right? Brother, how can we handle the task when we go back now? Garonne looked around and found that apart from the bumpy and rocky ground, there was still an evil small universe spreading around him. The small universe in the constellation of Virgo was nowhere to be found. Sacca also had some doubts in her heart when she saw this, whether it was really like what Garonne said, but still said. Not necessarily, after all, it's a golden saint's successor. It's impossible to die so easily. Even if we die, we'll find that evil universe and take him down, which can be considered an explanation. Garonne shook his head helplessly when he heard Sacca say this. After all, both of them are not very old now, just 2 or 3 years older than Sacca. However, the two soon discovered some footprints on the nearby ground, although not many, they were also clues. The two of them chased in the direction of their footprints, and soon saw Shajia holding a bird with a ba light hair inserted, grilling it on the fire, reciting the curse of rebirth while continuously sprinkling seasoning on it with the other hand, causing black lines to appear on his forehead. Is this really believing in Buddhism? What are you still doing? Garonne looked at the Buddhist beads wrapped around Shajia's hand and couldn't help but shout. Aren't you supposed to believe in Buddhism? You're still reciting the mantra of rebirth and baking a little bird at the same time. Garonne was a bit speechless, unsure of what to say. I eat it, it agrees. Shaga looked at Garonne and said solemnly. Nanny. How could it agree? Both Sacca and Garonne couldn't believe it, but seeing that Shaga didn't seem to be lying, they couldn't help but look at each other with some confusion. Shajia looked at the sky and found another flock of birds flying in. He used the small universe to capture them and asked, I'll use you to cook, okay? Of course, the birds did not answer, and Sacca and Garonne were also watching from the side. Later, when they heard Shaga's words, the two of them almost fell. I only heard Shaga say, if you don't speak, let's assume you agreed. This is the promise you said, ha ha ha. Garonne laughed heartily, and Sacca also smiled, but then Sacca said. The small universe you used just now. So it's you who fought against that evil small universe over there just now. Shajia responded lightly and continued to roast the birds. He roasted several birds in a row and threw 2 to Sacca and Garonne, starting his own delicious meal. After the 3 of them finished eating, Sacca asked Shaga about the evil universe, but Shaga turned to Garonne. Although he closed his eyes, Garonne still felt that Shaga was looking at him again. After a while, Garonne said somewhat unnaturally, "Look at me, why, is my universe evil?" "No, although it is a very domineering small universe, it is not evil. It seems that evil is not worthy of your small universe. What I want to say is that the person from that evil microcosm, although the microcosm is strong, has a very poor body, it seems like. Well, it's like kidney deficiency. As soon as I met you, I raised my level and my body exploded. No, it's not appropriate to say that it exploded. It seems like the universe didn't belong to him, and my body couldn't bear it and turned into a crack. So I buried him." Shajia said casually. "It doesn't belong to his small universe, It's possible. Wait a minute, he has kidney deficiency. Look at me, why, I'm not kidney deficient." Suddenly regaining his senses, Garonne shouted loudly, and Sacca smiled slightly. When he saw Garonne, he held back and turned around. However, his constantly moving shoulders proved that he was still laughing. After getting to know each other, Sacca explained his purpose to Shaga and invited her to return to the Holy Land together. Shaga naturally had nothing to disagree with. The 3 of them quickly arrived at the border of the Holy Domain. Shaga suddenly stopped and said to Shaga, "Shaga, you and Garonne are Gemini. Have you ever heard of the myth about Gemini? Gemini mythology. Of course I've heard of it, isn't it the brother who saved his brother with blood?" Garonne interjected from the side. Shaga turned around to face the 2 of them and said, "I'm not talking about this, but the Gemini curse, which has been called destiny by Gemini throughout history." The curse of Gemini. Sacca and Garonne spoke in unison. "Not bad, it's just a curse. Legend has it that this curse was cast by Hera, the queen, who was jealous of the child born to Zeus and her woman in mythology. However, recently I heard another version of it," said Shaga solemnly. "What version? Is there any other explanation?" Sacca asked. "Not bad, I personally think this version is more authentic and credible. Legend has it that since the mythological era, the 88 holy warriors who have been guarding the peace of the earth throughout history have been the elites among human elites, and among them, the 12 golden holy warriors are the most talented beings among humans. It can be said that if it weren't for the limited lifespan of humans and surpassing gods, it would only be a matter of time. However, even so, the potential of the golden saints throughout history still intimidates the gods, fearing that if any golden saints break the limits of humanity and become gods, their authority will be greatly challenged. Especially Gemini, known as the incarnation of gods throughout history, has been cursed by the gods to erase his potential. Anyone who encounters things will have both positive and negative thoughts, and the curse given by the gods to Gemini is to completely isolate and amplify these 2 thoughts to the limit. Over time, Gemini's soul will be divided into 2 types of personality. Is it right or wrong? Sacca's voice trembled slightly as she asked, her blue hair slightly graying at the roots. Shaga knew that this should be another personality of Sacca, and frankly said, "No, both Gemini personalities are just." "Nanny, it's impossible." Sacca said incredulously. "There is nothing impossible. If you can wear the Gemini golden cloak, it means that both of your personalities are just, and their starting points are for your initial goals or ideals, but with different means and methods. But both of these personalities are actually you. If you are in opposition to yourself, then in the end, regardless of which personality wins, you will lose more than half of your potential and talent, which is also the terrifying curse. However, not only in Gemini and 88 constellations, which one does not have the curse of the gods. It's just a matter of size." Right after looking at Sacca and Garonne who were still thinking, Shaga turned around and walked alone towards the Ares palace ahead. There was no one in the 12 palaces to stop them, because the little golden ones had originally planned to come and see Shaga together. The female zodiac attendants arrived at Ares' palace together, and just as they were about to leave, they heard what Shaga said to Sacca. They couldn't help but look at each other, and then saw Shaga walking into Ares' palace with his eyes closed. Mu trembled a bit and said, "What you just said is true." Shajia smiled faintly and then said, "Since I was born, Shajia has been conversing with the Buddha and never lying. However, as the strongest golden saint who guards the peace of the earth, even in the face of a curse, will you give up your beliefs?" "Not bad, no matter what curse it is, my holy sword from Shura will shatter it," said Shura, also known as Capricorn or Goat, firmly. Then, other little gold coins nodded firmly, claiming that they would never be afraid of the curse and would definitely give up their beliefs. "You're right, no matter what curse, it can't be broken without me, Sacca." Sacca and Garonne walked in. "Sacca, your hair," Ioro said in surprise when he saw Sacca. I saw that Sacca's hair was no longer the blue color of justice, but the gray color of blackening. Instead, it turned deep blue, and her eyes were no longer filled with melancholy or madness, but with unwavering determination and confidence without confusion. The incarnation of God. Gemini Sacca. Feeling that Sacca's microcosm has risen from the mid-7th sense to the near peak of the 7th sense, it seems that Sacca has merged into the original Sacca. Sacca couldn't help but sigh softly. However, upon hearing this, the little golden ones couldn't help but nod. Nowadays, Sacca is truly like a deity, powerful yet full of confidence and determination. Similarly, this also ignited the fighting spirit of the little golds, feeling the powerful universe of the inverted Sacca. The little golds couldn't help but secretly decided to practice well and break the curse like Sacca. They also had to ask Sacca what his own curse was. With their respective emotions rising and falling, Shaga and the others arrived at the papal palace to see Leon. Looking at Cheyenne, Shaga suddenly ignited a small universe that was no less than that of Sacca, and the 7th sense was approaching its peak. As Shaga's small universe ignited, the golden cloak of Virgo suddenly flew out of the box and was instantly worn by Shaga. At the same time, Shaga also restrained the small universe, feeling the inheritance brought by the cloak. Looking at Shaga with his eyes closed, Xiang seemed to see a Shimada, who had taken Muyitsi from the underworld with his own strength and used his life to make 108 prayer beads to seal the immortal body of the underworld fighter. Cheyenne, who woke up from his memories, looked at the little golds and found that except for Shagataka Ioros, the three of them had comprehended the 7th sense, most of them were still around the middle of the 6th sense. So he said, "Although you now have a small universe, most of you have not yet grasped the essence of the small universe. Sacca, you can lead them to Mount Lu to find Tong Hu for cultivation. When you have grasped the 7th sense and gained Tong Hu's recognition, when will you come back?" "Yes, Your Majesty the Pope," Sacca readily agreed. Everyone followed Sacca, and Sacca, like Sacca, did not wear a sacred robe and went together to Mount Lu's 5 old peaks. At the 5 old peaks, Sacca handed Pope Cheyenne's letter, and after reading it, Tong Hu began to make arrangements for everyone. Tong Hu said, "The microcosm, as its name suggests, is a miniature universe within the human body that generates various destructive forces due to the cosmic explosion. Today, no matter what level of understanding you have of the microcosm, the first thing you need to do is to strengthen your physical training. Otherwise, the stronger the power of the microcosm, the more your body will be unable to withstand it, and ultimately you will only explode and die." Speaking, Tong Hu crushed a stone. Sacca and Garonne couldn't help but nod in agreement when they thought of the person in the evil universe that Shaga had mentioned. However, Shajia couldn't help but feel a little amused when he saw the situation. At that time, he just casually said. Chapter 4. The Cultivation of 5 Old Peaks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Due to their age and physical weakness, the little golden ones only receive 6 hours of physical training per day and are still divided into 3 groups with intervals. The remaining time is arranged by the little golden ones themselves, but most of the techniques are honing their skills. Shajia, on the other hand, finds a place alone to sit quietly, combining the knowledge of the power system of past and present lives, and continuously using the energy of heaven and earth to refine his body. Sometimes during breaks, I miss Pandora by myself, and sometimes I often engage in sparring or chatting with the little golden ones. Shaga gets along well with each of the little golds, but the best ones are Mu, Sacca, Garonne, Barutaba, Dismasku, Camo, Shura, Miro, and Abrodi. It seems that except for the brothers Aeolus and Aeolia, everyone else has a very good relationship with Shaga. It's not that they have a bad relationship with each other, but rather that they are relatively average compared to others. As for the reason, the AI simply couldn't stand him shouting for Athena one by one, as if no one else was loyal to Athena except for him. Of course, Shajia didn't have any loyalty to Athena in his heart. As for Xiao Ai, of course, it's for the rare goddess among the saints, the magic bell. Although the two characters in the original work are not very important, Shaga, who has been treating the women she likes in this world as her private property since she came to this world, is of course very unhappy with Ioria, who seems to be very close to the magic bell in the original work. Quickly, a year has passed, and the little golden ones have not only grown in their bodies, but also in the small universe. They have all realized the seventh sense. Sacca has only reached the peak of the seventh sense. After all, the body has not yet grown, and the small universe cannot have much improvement. However, even so, Sacca has reached a level that many golden saints have never reached in their lifetime. Nowadays, Sacca has slightly sensed the existence of the eighth sense, although only perceiving it. As for Shajia, during this year, she also continuously refined her flesh and body, constantly fitting in with her primordial spirit. With the cultivation of refining essence, transforming chi, refining chi, and transforming spirit, Shajia's body has completely homologous with the primordial spirit. It can be said that from then on, the age of Shajia's primordial spirit is equivalent to that of flesh and is no longer 18 years old in her previous life. Shajia's flesh and body are the same. Although originally delicate, they are actually the face of Westerners. Now, except for golden hair, their appearance is no different from that of Chinese people, elegant and exquisite, without any roughness of Westerners. As for cultivation, the small universe is still the eighth peak of the senses, but strength can no longer rely on the protection of holy clothes. Through ancient martial arts techniques combined with the small universe to continuously refine the flesh and body, it has reached the innate realm. Of course, this is countless times stronger than the previous innate realm. After all, although the principle is the same, but the materials are different, just like building the same building. The congenital realm of the previous life is like a model, and the congenital realm of this life is the real high-rise building. The little golden ones who have already understood the seventh sense still have the same selection as the original work, but it is not only the little golden ones who came to Lushan to train together to understand the seventh sense. Alyafai, the silver saint of Lyra, couldn't help but sigh a little when Saga saw the communication with the little golds in the constellation, lighting up Lyra. Shaga, who closed her eyes, could still feel the phantom of Lyra behind Alyafai. It was truly a romantic microcosm filled with Aegean winds. Shaga couldn't help but think of the woman who also loved the seven-stringed instrument, Pandora. Shajia shook her head slightly and sighed softly, what a sad fate. The little golden ones around them who had already understood their zodiac signs couldn't help but turn their heads to look at Shaga. Obviously, they all thought of Shaga's curse about the saint. Although they didn't know why, they fell silent one after another. Shaga, what are you sighing about when you see Alyafai comprehend her zodiac sign? The voice of Tong who came, although he didn't understand what Shajia was referring to, the little golds felt a bit depressed when they heard Shajia's words, but it was still clearly visible. The holy battles that take place every 243 years, and the sacrifices of the holy warriors that take place every 243 years, are all worth it. Shajia's plain voice was clear to everyone's ears. After looking at Shajia, Tonghu couldn't help but think of a Shimada from the past, who was a female saint fighter. It's really hard to understand. Tonghu said, Shajia, the so-called saints are fighting for the goddess Athena, to protect love and justice, and to defend the peace of the earth. For Athena. Before Tonghu could finish his words, he was interrupted by Shajia. Shajia felt the ups and downs of the little golden men's emotions, but ignored them and continued to say. Since I was born, I have had constant conversations with the Buddha, and when I went out to practice, I have also been constantly observing the suffering of the world with my heart and eyes. However, so far, I, Shajia, have not learned any compassion from the Buddha for the weak. No, sending them out as soon as possible may also be considered a kind of compassion. However, even so, I am still willing to fight for the peace of the earth, even if it burns my soul. I am willing to do anything, but is Athena really worth me guarding? As she spoke, Shaga unleashed her seventh sense peak in the small universe. A golden light flashed past her, and the golden holy robe of the Virgo constellation suddenly appeared on her body. Shaga suddenly opened her eyes, and the pressure of the small universe burst forth, while saying, "The golden cloak of Virgo will witness with me." As the small universe converged in an instant, Shaga closed her eyes again and sent the golden robe of the constellation of Virgo back to the sacred realm. She turned around and walked towards a giant rock next to the waterfall. Looking at Shajia meditating on the boulder, Tonghu sighed slightly. From the previous generation, the female golden saint Ashimada was like this, and this generation of Shajia is also like this, especially the sentence, "Even if I burn my soul, I will spare no effort." Back then, Ashimada was using his life to protect the peace of the earth. Thinking of this, Tonghu smiled bitterly and said to the little gold. Saint Seiya is the Saint Seiya of the goddess Athena. As the guardian of the earth, Athena has been guarding the peace of the earth since the mythological era. Athena represents love and justice, and protecting Athena is protecting love and justice. Protecting the peace of the earth is the belief of all of us Saint Seiya. Yes, teacher. Although the little golden ones have matured a bit earlier than the average person, they are still young and are still being talked about by Tonghu with excitement. Among them, Aoros and Aoria shouted excitedly, saying that they should use their lives to protect Athena, and so on. However, Shaga, who was meditating, ignored all of this. At this moment, Shaga felt the small universe of Lyra and had fallen into a longing for Pandora, silently murmuring to Pandora's sister. Suddenly, behind the waterfall of Mount Lu, eerie microcosm appeared and attacked Shajia. Shajia's hand was lightly knotted, while the other hand seemed to be there all along. He held the attacker in the air with his palm, only to find that he did not have a human form, but rather a pile of huge insect eggs. Upon seeing it, Tonghu on the 5 old peaks was immediately startled and exclaimed loudly, "Underworld warrior, have you started to escape from the seal?" "No, the seal is still there." "Is this a fish that has escaped the net?" Shajia looked at the earth demon star in front of him with a small universe and murmured to himself, "Are you still a worm egg? The butterfly of hell in the underworld. Then I'll send you to the underworld to dress up the flower garden of hell." Whispering softly, the demon has subdued. A flash of Buddha light flashed by, and the earth demon star in front of Shajia was instantly purified to the point where there was no residue left. Shaga stood up from the boulder and faced the waterfall, whispering, "Underworld warriors. To prevent you from doing evil in the world, I will add a safety net to Athena's seal." I saw Shajia imprinting his left hand in front of his chest, holding a prayer bead high in his right hand. In an instant, a phantom of a great Buddha appeared behind Shajia. Suddenly, the Buddha reached out his palm and slapped it towards the waterfall of Mount Lu. In an instant, his palm transformed into a 5-finger-shaped phantom of a giant mountain, which then disappeared. Then Shajia continued to sit on the boulder and meditate as if nothing had happened. Watching the entire process on the 5 old peaks, Tonghu and Xiaojin couldn't help but be shocked. They only heard Aoros tremble and say, "This is the strength of Shajia. It's just like gods. Ioria also exclaimed in shock. Sacca, a woman of the zodiac sign, truly deserves to be the closest man to God. Sacca also sighed. Tonghu was the same. Regarding Shajia's strength, Tonghu realized that he had never seen through it before. If it weren't for Shajia burning the small universe on his own, he wouldn't even have felt Shajia's existence. You should know that I am not as weak as the golden double in the past. After more than 200 years of meditation, coupled with the grace of Athena, I have now entered the 8th sense of the universe. However, despite this, I still can't see through Sacca. Tonghu shook his head and sighed in his heart. I didn't expect that I wasn't a match for the previous generation of Ashimita, and I still can't see through this generation of Shajia. However, Tonghu immediately became happy again. The golden saints of this generation seemed to have much stronger talent than their generation, which provided more assurance for the victory of this holy battle. Quickly, 2 years had passed, and the little golden ones finally finished their practice in Mount Lu and returned to the Holy Land to inherit their respective sacred garments. It seems that there is no significant change from the original work. It is worth mentioning that Alyafai, who practiced with the little golden ones, returned to the Holy Realm as early as a year ago to inherit the silver cloak of Lyra. It is said that he accompanies a girl named Julius near the Holy Realm every day. Chapter 5. Magic Bell and Sarna. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Returning to the Holy Realm, Shaga was given the responsibility of guarding the women's palace, and the other little golden men also guarded their respective palaces. 3 years have passed in the blink of an eye. In the past 3 years, while wandering in the Holy Land, Shaga encountered 2 little girls who were fighting each other. Judging from their clothes, neither of them was a saint, but they both had the strength of the early 6th sense. Shajia carefully scrutinized the 2 of them, his heart twitching slightly, and he thought to himself, are they the demons and Sarna? Hee, it's really interesting. Shajia walked casually towards the 2 of them, just as they were about to use their ultimate move to confront each other. Suddenly, when they saw Shajia approaching, they were startled, but it was too late to stop. Thundering Claw and Eagle Kick both hit Shaga at the same time. Shaga smiled slightly and moved his hands lightly, grabbing Sharna's wrist with one hand and Magic Bell's ankle with the other. With both hands released, the 2 collided due to inertia and fell into Shaga's arms at the same time. Suddenly, their masks were knocked off due to collision. Although Shaga closed her eyes, she could still see their delicate and beautiful faces, despite their young age. Coupled with their green and brown hair, they always gave off a strange feeling. After looking around for a while, Shajia gently released the 2 and asked, "My name is Shajia, what are your names?" Magic Bell and Sarna exchanged a glance and found themselves somewhat reluctant to part with Shaga's embrace. Although Shaga closed his eyes, who knew if he had seen his own face? However, even so, influenced by Shaga's pure, natural, sacred, and warm temperament, the 2 found themselves not only lifeless, but also somewhat stealing joy. Thinking about it, Mo Ling and Sarna glanced at each other again, only to see that each other's faces were slightly flushed. They couldn't help but be taken aback, and then heard Shajia's question. Mo Ling and Sarna each picked up their masks and put them back on, only to find that Shajia, who was closing her eyes, furrowed her brows slightly. After all, the masks were not really good looking. The 2 exchanged a glance and thought to each other, he must have seen. The 2 shook their heads and each remained calm. The Magic Bell said, "My name is Magic Bell, she is Sarna, and we are the backup saints." "Who are you?" Sarna also interjected, "Yes, Shaga, you're so amazing. Are you a saint?" Shajia smiled slightly, causing the 2 women who were observing Shajia to feel dizzy. They secretly looked at each other and found that they were also doing the same action, their faces turning red, but unfortunately they were shrouded in masks. But this really doesn't pose any obstacle to Shaga. Looking at the two women with flushed faces, Shaga suddenly became interested and said, "My name is Shaga, and I am a saint of the zodiac sign." "Where female saint?" Mo Ling was a bit puzzled. At this moment, Sarna said, "The saint of the zodiac, is that the saint of the zodiac, also known as the saint of the zodiac?" "That's right." Shajia nodded lightly and then asked again, "Did you just practice?" Mo Ling nodded and said, "Well, we are good friends and competitors. We were just sparring, but I didn't know we met you." Sharna also said, "That's right, 6 months from now, we will all compete for the sacred vestments of our respective constellations, but we definitely won't lose." Saying this, Sharna and Magic Bell both nodded firmly. After all, the competition for the holy clothes could not be described as too cruel, and a slight mistake could lead to death. "Do you have a teacher to teach now?" Shajia asked. "No, both Magic Ring and I have reached the level of bronze saints, but we don't have the holy clothes that match our zodiac sign. Generally, the training for postnatal students is no longer useful for us, so Magic Ring and I can only explore on our own," Sarna replied. The Magic Bell also nodded. Shajia looked at the two and said, "So, you guys come with me." Turning around and walking towards the 12 palaces. Magic Bell and Sharna glanced at each other and followed them together. In the Aries Palace, Mu Zheng was hammering and hitting there. When he saw Shajia walking in with the two women, he didn't say anything, just smiled kindly and got busy with his own business. Shajia didn't care either, after all, the way the gold people get along was like this. Then, Taurus Palace, Gemini Palace, Cancer Palace, and Lion Palace all casually greeted each other and went their separate ways. After all, they didn't have the same powerful strength as Shajia and had to work hard to cultivate. Later, Shajia brought the Magic Bell and Sarna to his palace, the Women's Palace. Shajia magically raised 2 lotus flowers the size of a basin on the ground and sat cross in the air, saying to the two women, "Sit down, this is the place I am guarding Women's Palace." Mo Ling and Sharna followed Shajia all the way, feeling extremely shocked in their hearts, whether it was Mu or the guardians of the previous palaces such as Sacca and Arutaba. The small universe emanating from each person's body, although not in battle, still made the two feel suffocating and oppressive, especially the Gemini Sacca in the palace. His powerful small universe aura made the two women feel that this person was a god, the god in charge of their life and death. But what surprised the two women the most was Shaga in front of her, who had no trace of a small universe, but naturally suppressed everyone in all aspects. Until the two women sat on the lotus flower, they finally regained their senses. Sarna trembled and said, "Shajia. You. They. How could those people be so strong just now? In front of them, I felt like I could suffocate at any moment." Magic Bell nodded and said, "That's right, I feel like they're like gods. Also, you can easily suppress them, how strong are you?" However, the Magic Bell didn't say this sentence, just deeply stuck Shajia and sighed in her heart. Strong is natural. Because we are the strongest holy warriors, the strongest golden holy warriors in the 88 constellations. You will feel that we are as strong as gods, because we are warriors destined to fight against gods and protect the peace of the earth. Shaga sighed softly. Curious about why Shajia brought 2 weak women into the palace, the golden ones also quietly observed the palace through the small universe. Upon hearing Shajia's conversation with the 2 women, they not only nodded deeply, but also thought to themselves, "Fight with the gods. I need to become stronger." Later, I heard Shajia say, "Magic Bell, Sharna, you can practice with me from now on." They each took back the small universe and continued their cultivation. In the palace, Shajia said to Magic Bell and Sarna, "Magic Bell, Sarna, you have only a preliminary perception of the small universe, but you cannot perceive all of your own small universe. Let me help you, let alone touch the essence of the small universe. Come with me." Shajia arrived at the side hall of the women's palace with the Magic Bell and Sarna, only to see a wall tightly guarded by two huge doors. Numerous Buddha statues and scriptures were imprinted on it. Shajia pushed lightly with both hands, and in an instant, a bright light shone through the door. Upon entering, the two discovered that there was an endless flower garden inside the door, and to the west were two swaying trees, also known as Bodhi trees. Shajia said, "This is the twin trees garden, where the Buddha sat and transformed." The three of them walked in. Shajia waved her right hand lightly, closed the door again, and turned to the two women, saying, "First of all, what you need to do is fully perceive your own small universe. The essence of the small universe is the seventh sense of the human body, and only the sixth sense can fully perceive the seventh sense. Therefore, the first thing you need to do is to develop your sixth sense." "Developing the sixth sense?" asked Magic Bell and Sarna curiously. "Not bad, your five senses have become very sensitive through various physical exercises. Similarly, in some extreme training, you also vaguely understand how to use the sixth sense to perceive, and as a result, you have awakened to the universe." Seeing Magic Bell and Sarna nod, Shaga continued, "So next, I will seal your five senses and let you rely entirely on the sixth sense to act. Remember, you must remember your feelings when you first awakened to the small universe." "Yes." Mo Ling and Sarna both clenched their fists and answered firmly. Shajia smiled slightly and said, "So, let's start now." The two of them trembled slightly and nodded in agreement. Shajia smiled and said, "Don't be nervous, it's just sealing the five senses. There won't be any pain, and I believe in your talent." Saying this, Shajia gave the two of them a gentle smile, which immediately made the two women infatuated. Then, with a blush on her face, she nodded to Shajia and signaled for her to start. "So, I'll start." Tianwu Baoluan. Shajia let out a soft drink, and soon the two women fell into darkness. They couldn't see, hear, touch anything, and couldn't even feel their own bodies. Suddenly, they felt a little panicked. At this moment, Shajia's voice rang in their hearts. "Don't panic, Magic Bell, Sarna, remember the feeling when you first understood the universe." Shajia looked at the two women who looked like vegetations. With a light flick of her right hand, countless petals gathered and spread into a flower bed. Shajia gently hugged the two girls and smiled for a while before sitting next to her, meditating. Quickly, 2 months had passed, and Magic Bell and Sarna still hadn't woken up. Shaga's heavenly dance wheel, without a goddess hanging, was difficult to break even the Golden Saint, let alone Magic Bell and Sarna. Although Shaga was not using a real heavenly dance wheel, it was only for training. For 2 months, Shajia was constantly using his energy to nourish the bodies of Magic Bell and Sarna. After all, their bodies needed nutrition and energy. Of course, Shajia would also use the small universe to attract spring water to help them clean every day. Although the three of them were still young, Shajia, who had memories of their past lives, couldn't help but feel a little strange when he thought about the identities of the two girls. For 2 months, whenever the two women were lost, Shajia's figure would appear in their hearts, encouraging and guiding them. Gradually, Shajia's figure had been deeply imprinted in the hearts of Magic Bell and Sarna. Unconsciously, both Magic Bell and Sarna regarded Shajia as the pillar of their own lives, and their emotions were born in this mysterious way. Chapter 6. Shaga's Love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So, after 3 more months, even with Shaga's mindset, I couldn't help but feel a little anxious for the two women, because next month is the day for the Silver Sacred Clothes competition between the Aquila and Ophiuchus. The holy domain cannot be suspended just because of Shaga's words, that would be too domineering. In 5 months, Mo Ling, Sarna, and Shaga have all grown taller. The two women also look graceful and have a youthful and beautiful posture. Due to Shaga's use of vitality to nourish, Mo Ling and Sarna's physical development is much better than eating food from the Holy Land. It was already the last month, and there was still a week left before the competition. Sitting quietly, Shaga suddenly sensed that the small universe of Magic Bell and Sarna was burning non-stop until it reached the introductory stage of the seventh sense before stopping. Mo Ling and Sharna opened their eyes at the same time, feeling themselves, and then looked at each other. Suddenly, they realized that each other seemed to have matured a lot, whether it was height or three-dimensional, and they didn't wear masks. Even their clothes were different from before, and so on, clothes. The two women suddenly had an urge to scream, but after all, they were not ordinary women. They forced themselves to hold back and looked at Shaga, who had already finished meditation and was walking towards them. Shajia smiled slightly at the two women and said, "It's been almost half a year now. If you don't wake up again, I can only help you lift the seal. Next week, it's your holy dress competition." "Half a year? You said we've been sleeping for half a year," said Mo Ling and Sharna in surprise. "Not bad, now that you have awakened your seventh sense, believing in the competition for the holy robe is no longer a problem for you," said Shajia, smiling contentedly at the two women. However, Mo Ling and Sharna's thoughts were no longer focused on the competition for the holy robe. They looked at their bodies and found that they were taking care of themselves too well, completely unlike the appearance of not eating or taking a shower for 6 months. Thinking about how these two women reacted, they looked at each other and then Sharna hesitated a bit and said to Shaga, "We haven't woken up for half a year, haven't we? We haven't eaten for half a year. Haven't taken a shower." Shajia smiled naturally and said, "You don't have to worry. For the past 6 months, I have been rejuvenated every day." You can understand it as energy similar to the small universe to nourish your bodies. Every night, I will also use the small universe to attract spring water to help you take a shower. Upon hearing this, Mo Ling and Sharna each blushed, but seeing Shajia's natural appearance and even smaller appearance than the two of them, they couldn't help but sigh at each other, completely treating Shajia as an ignorant and powerful child in matters of men and women. However, the two women looked at each other equally and walked together to Shaga's side. One of them held onto Shaga's arm, and Sharna leaned her face closer to Shaga's face. She said affectionately, "Shaga, have you ever heard the rule that Athena's saint warrior cannot be a woman? If she is a woman, she must wear a mask and abandon her identity as a woman." Magic Bell was also closely watching Shaga from the side, but unexpectedly heard Shaga say, "Athena. Jealous of her feminine appearance. It is indeed the evil nature of the Greek gods." Magic Bell quickly covered Shajia's mouth and said, Shajia, such disrespectful words towards the goddess cannot be said again. They will be treated as traitors. What we want to say is..." Watching the Magic Bell speak for a while without understanding, Sharna became a bit anxious and immediately spoke up, "If a female saint is seen for her true face, she will either kill that person, or fall in love with him. So. The more Sharna spoke, the lower her voice became. "So you want to ask me, do you love you?" Shajia interjected on the side. Mo Ling and Sharna looked at Shajia with some shyness and some panic, feeling a little nervous about what Shajia would say next. Shajia gently grabbed the Magic Bell and Sarna, and continued to say, "I don't know either. Although I have been communicating with Buddha since I was born, I never know what love is. Athena talks about love and justice every day, and the Pope and saints are no exception. But I never knew what love was. Buddha's love is compassion, but I, Shajia, do not have any compassion for the weak. I don't know if I love you or not, I just know that from the moment I first met you, I wanted to be with you forever. I don't understand why, it seems like I don't need to understand. For the past 6 months, I have been spending time with you every day, and I feel that this kind of life makes me feel more real and cherished more. Instead of making me fight for Athena, I would rather fight to protect you." Upon hearing Shaga's murmurs, Magic Bell and Sharna couldn't help but tightly embrace half of Shaga's body. Sharna said, "Then let's make up our minds. We'll be together forever from now on, and you won't be able to abandon us." The magic bell also nodded at the same time. From now on, you will live in the palace of women. You will be a part of my life, and I, Shajia, will use my life to protect you. Shajia said softly. However, at this moment, the magic bell lifted its head in Shajia's arms and looked at her steadily, then said, "We don't need you to protect us with your life. We want you to protect your own life for us. As you said, we are a part of your life, so wherever you go, we go, whether you live or die." Upon hearing the words of the magic bell, Shajia suddenly opened her eyes, and the first ray of emotion in this world bloomed in her azure eyes. Meanwhile, Sarna nodded and said, "The magic bell is right. You need to protect yourself for us, and we will continue to grow stronger for you, strong enough to protect you." Shajia stared blankly at the magic bell and Sarna, suddenly showing a baby-like smile. For the first time, after arriving in this world, Shajia smiled so happily and purely. The two women were taken aback and then picked up by Shajia. Arriving at the pre-laid flower bed, she hugged the two women and lay on them without any image. Shajia, accompanied by laughter, whispered in their ears. "Perhaps I have a little understanding. What is love? If so, then I love you all, without comparing to anyone, because this is the most sincere thing in the world, and nothing can compare to it." Immediately, Shajia closed her eyes again and fell asleep. For the first time, since awakening to the small universe, Shajia has been using meditation instead of sleep. The first time Shajia slept so peacefully. Watching Shaga fall asleep like a baby, Magic Bell and Sarna smiled at each other and lay down together with Shaga. Three little dolls were secretly destined for life like this. However, Shajia, who was sleeping soundly, did not know that this time, due to his mental clarity, Shajia's microcosm began to undergo a qualitative change. The next day when she woke up, Shajia looked at the two girls beside her, smiled slightly, and then moved around. Her body suddenly froze. The cultivation of a typical saint is to awaken one's own astrological points and activate the corresponding universe. However, according to the theory that Shajia's ancient martial arts techniques were based on his own body forming heaven and earth, in reality, they were just a few stars. Compared to the movement of the Zhou-Tian star dough, the power of the internal constellations was not much. But holy warriors can merge the constellations inside their bodies with those in the sky through holy clothing. This pattern, similar to the unity of heaven and man in ancient martial arts, can indeed unleash even more terrifying power. However, Shaga applied the concept of ancient martial arts to the cultivation of the small universe, but the formation of the small universe is still based on the few star life points in the constellation of Virgo. Although Shajia now practices to the innate realm, it is still the cultivation of ancient martial arts that brings his body into this realm. He relies on absorbing the energy of heaven and earth, refining essence and transforming energy, and refining chi and transforming spirit to cultivate himself and strengthen his spirit. Although the cultivation of the small universe has been completely paved with the theory of ancient martial arts techniques, in terms of comprehensiveness, it still cannot be compared to Shajia's previous life's ancient martial arts techniques. Shajia has always been proud of the ancient martial arts techniques he has practiced, because only the ancient martial arts techniques of the Zhou Tian Xing Do coordinate and operate within his body, with the rising and falling of the sun and the moon, and the law of heaven and earth truly being called the Shangwu Dao. The techniques that are triggered by a few star life points give Shajia a non-mainstream technique of drinking poison and quenching thirst, which can stimulate some functions of external sex in his previous life by stimulating one or two acupoints. And now, due to the complete understanding of her mind, Shajia has entered a state of emptiness, assimilating all the acupoints, paths, and star destiny points around her body. It can be said that Shajia has truly possessed a universe, rather than just a few stars in the constellation of Virgo. This also means that Saga is not just a simple person. As long as Saga is willing, she can become a saint or even a fighter of any zodiac sign. As long as it belongs to the constellation system between heaven and earth, Saga can easily resonate with it. That is to say, today's saga can use the ultimate moves of any zodiac sign. Feeling the change in himself, Shajia fully understands what this means. The ultimate moves of other constellations are second to none. Nowadays, Shajia is able to perfectly utilize the ancient martial arts techniques of his past life in the microcosm, integrating the microcosm with the ancient martial arts. This means that Shajia's casual attacks will become the supreme ultimate move in the eyes of others, even if it's just a simple punch and finger, because this is ancient martial arts. Even with such a heart, Shaga couldn't help but be ecstatic. He reached out and held the magic bell and Sarna in his arms, spinning a few times in place, which made the magic bell and Sarna burst into laughter. This was not the strongest golden saint, it was simply the child who was happy to receive candy. The three of them laughed for a while and began to walk out of the swaying twin trees garden, arriving at the women's palace. The golden saints who haven't sensed Shaga's microcosm for half a year can't help but come to Shaga's place women's palace. Chapter 7. Weakness of the Golden Saint. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Dismusk walked in with Sacca and others, and upon seeing Shaga, Dismusk couldn't help but smile and say, "Shajia, I haven't seen you for half a year. Where are you hiding? It makes Lord Dismusk want to go to the Yellow Spring to see if you're inside, ha ha ha." Shajia smiled slightly and said, "Just like in your Cancer Palace, there is a post-flower garden called Huangquan Bizaka. In my place, there is also a post-flower garden belonging to the female zodiac sign. Hohua Garden. Is it?" Sacca seemed to have guessed something and stopped speaking. The other golden ones were also similar, because the so-called Queen Flower Garden in the Lady's Palace, the Twin Tree Garden, was actually the burial place of the Lady Saint. However, at this moment, Dismusk looked at the magic bell behind Shaga and suddenly shouted loudly, "This is impossible. This is really." The other golden saints turned their heads when they heard Dismusk's voice, followed Dismusk's gaze, and found that the two women who were weak as ants to the gold 6 months ago now had the qualifications to punch them. You should know that this has only been 6 months, and it took them several years to awaken their seventh sense, even though it was during their childhood. A Brody, a Pisces woman, saw the two women also feeling a bit bitter and said, "Shaga, how on earth did you help them cultivate? You know, even if Dismash and I are only in the middle of the seventh sense now, burning the small universe with all our might, we can only reach the high level of the seventh sense. They only followed you for a few months before awakening to the seventh sense. This is really..." Shajia smiled slightly and said, "Everything in the world is in balance, and the Golden Saint is no exception. The more terrifying the zodiac signs in the Golden Saint are, the more difficult it is to improve in the small universe. For example, your Rose and Dismusk's corpse chi. Even the most basic moves, when faced with the average seventh sense mid-high or even peak, using clever words can easily kill you, but this has also cast your fatal injuries." As Shaga became more serious, the Golden Saints couldn't help but feel intimidated. Shaga continued, "This is also the fatal weakness of most of our Golden Saints, and that is our moves are too strong." Sacca and others were lost in thought, but Dismusk, Arutaba and others were a bit confused. Arutaba said, "Is the move too strong? Is it not good if the move is too strong?" Shaga continued, "It's not that being too strong is not good, but that each of us Golden Saints possesses our own golden combat skills, which means even when facing stronger enemies than us, we won't be helpless. But similarly, unlike the Bronze and Silver Saints, our starting point is too high, which means we have never really fought to the death. The small universe has never had an extreme combustion, so there is nothing wrong with not realizing it in our daily lives. Even when facing some second-rate gods and third-rate gods, we are just wasting our energy and feeling in trouble. This is also the reason why most of us Golden Saints improve slowly. Don't you forget that we all awakened our seventh sense only when we were in dire straits." Shaga's words awakened the Golden Saints like a sudden enlightenment, and then Dismusk chuckled and said, "So, Shaga, how did you push them into despair?" "Hee hee." Shaga smiled at Dismusk and said a light sentence that made all the Golden Saints shudder. It's nothing. It's just that they've been living in an environment where they've lost their senses for the past 6 months. Losing the 5 senses. Returning for 6 months. Dismusketon felt a chill all over his body. Although the Golden Saints all understood the 7th sense, losing the 5th sense would still greatly damage their strength. If they lost the 6th sense, they might not even be able to perceive the small universe anymore. Without a goddess to hang, one will only die in nothingness, and there is no strength to perish with the other. Unless they reach the 8th sense and fully control the 7th sense. After all, only by possessing the 8th sense of Alaya consciousness, which is the true self, the Een god in ancient martial arts, possessing all the memories from birth to the present, knowing who they are and what they want to do, can they not get lost and disappear in nothingness. Finally, we arrived at the Holy Clothes competition, but it was not a problem for Magic Bell and Sarna. The two of them easily didn't even use their ultimate moves, just using a supersonic fist of around 10 Mach to defeat all their opponents, several years earlier than in the original work. In the original work, they were not so young to obtain the Holy Clothes. In the original work, only the Golden Saints awakened the universe at the age of 3 or 4, and understood the 7th sense at the age of 5 or 6. The young Golden Warriors in the original work became Golden Saints around the age of 7. Quickly, Shaga saw the two women, Magic Bell and Sarna, wearing silver vestments from the Aquila and Ophiuchus constellations, return to their palace. However, upon seeing these two vestments, Shaga frowned lightly, and at most, the material was better than bronze, and the coverage area was not as large as ordinary bronze. Shajia reached out and lightly touched the sacred vestments of the two women. In an instant, the two vestments shattered into fragments and formed the original form of the constellation. However, according to Mu in the original work, these two vestments were already dead. Magic Bell and Sarna looked at each other, not understanding why Shaga was doing it, but they were not angry because they knew that Shaga was doing it, and there must be a reason for him. Moreover, the holy robe was easily shattered by Shaga, which... It's too weak, isn't it? Shajia brought the Magic Bell and Sarna to Ares' palace and saw Mu knocking and striking in a pile of metal. Shajia said, "Mu, help me repair their holy clothes. It would be even better if we could expand the coverage." Mu looked up and saw the holy clothes of the two women. He was startled and said, "No way, Shajia. They just got the holy clothes. Did they encounter a strong enemy?" Shajia smiled slightly and said, "No, it's just that I think their holy clothes are too poor and I want to use my own blood to help them improve." Mu Luoran nodded and said, "Using the blood of the Golden Saints to resurrect the holy clothes, with the increase of the user's microcosm, it is indeed possible to elevate the holy clothes to a level close to gold. However, if you want to transform their holy clothes, Ophiuchus will just give them back. It can barely be modified, while Aquila will not be able to." "Is there a shortage of materials?" said Shajia. Mu nodded and then said, "Actually, a long time ago, although the coverage of most holy robes was not as good as that of the golden holy robe, it was not much different. Well, it was similar to the Lyra holy robe worn by Alyaphi. But with the wars of the past dynasties, the holy garments have been destroyed and thrown away, and the only ones that can barely be called intact are probably the golden holy garments. Even if other holy garments are resurrected, they cannot reach their original coverage due to the lack of materials and components. Although they can still communicate with constellations and strengthen the microcosm, the effect of protection is no longer as good as before, so can these materials be combined with my blood?" Shajia waved his right hand and took out the metal and grass shaving sword that he had collected from the ring space. Upon seeing this, Mu was immediately surprised. If it weren't for the lost technique of crafting holy robes, these materials could have been used to create a complete holy robe, and that sword. It seems like a divine weapon. However, out of trust in Shaga, Mu did not ask much. After Shaga finished bleeding, Mu began to transform the holy robe. Shaga, Magic Bell, and Sarna were watching from the side. Unconsciously, 2 hours had passed, and 2 brand new sacred vestments of Aquila and Ophiuchus were presented to the 2 of them. Especially for the constellation Ophiuchus, Shaga seemed to have seen the shadow of the Ophiuchus golden cloak seen online in his past life, and couldn't help but be a bit mesmerized. Seeing the holy garment that even the calm Saga had modified for himself, Mu couldn't help but smile with satisfaction, just like a chef likes others to eat all his dishes. As a blacksmith, Mu also hopes that others will be satisfied with his craftsmanship. The current holy cloth of Aquila is no longer the image of the little bird just now, but truly resembles a divine eagle soaring in the sky, somewhat similar to the holy cloth of White Bird. However, compared to the roundness of White Bird, the holy cloth of Aquila is more divine and majestic, possessing the power to soar in the sky and hunt for sentient beings. After Magic Bell and Sarna put on their holy clothes, Shaga and Mu felt that they were not just 2 silver saints standing in front of them, but 2 majestic Valkyries. However, grass-shaved sword Mu did not use it and still returned it to Shaga, because Mu's current strength is not enough to transform the artifact, especially the demon sword extracted from the ancient monster's body. This may only be possible if Mu breaks through to the 8th sense, and at the lowest, he needs to reach the peak of the 7th sense. Send the remaining pieces of Silver Star Sand to Mu, Shajia, Magic Bell, and Sarna's return home women's palace. The 3 of them come to the Twin Trees garden together. After closing the door, the 2 women start to elevate the small universe and feel their new holy clothes. With the advancement of the 2 female universes, both silver sacred garments have turned into gold, and anyone who sees them will never say they are silver sacred garments. And as the color of the sacred robe changed to gold, the 2 women surprisingly gained a new inheritance from the sacred robe. Has the holy robe been completed and the inheritance been restored? Watching on the side, Shaga silently pondered. However, Magic Bell was somewhat pleased to try its new ultimate move. It knew how to use Meteor Fist, which was a common skill. However, Magic Bell used it more exquisitely, adding fake actions to confuse opponents, awakening the universe, and obtaining the holy cloth was just a slight illusion that could be used in conjunction with Meteor Fist. Divine Claw Flash, also known as Eagle Star Flash, is a kicking technique used in conjunction with illusions. If it weren't for the amazing insight of Magic Bell as a member of the constellation Aquila, it could be used to catch the opponent's weaknesses and make a fatal blow. It's not really a powerful ultimate move on other people. Of course, Aquila's ultimate move is only suitable for Aquila. However, in the eyes of Shajia or any golden saint, these ultimate moves are simply too low level and cannot be compared to anyone who can call them a golden level of combat skills. On the contrary, they cannot be compared to the Bronze Saint's ultimate moves such as Lushan Ascending Dragon King, Diamond Stardust Fist, and Phoenix Phantom Fist. Among them, Lushan Ascending Dragon King and Diamond Stardust Fist are also quasi-golden level combat skills. Phoenix Phantom Fist can be said to be a very top-notch type even in golden combat skills. Chapter 8. New Tips. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In contrast, Magic Bell and Sarna only have these poor 3-legged cats. Although both of them are using it well, one is a physical attack of the Sonic Fist class combined with some illusions that can be used as a camouflage, and the other is a physical attack of the Sonic Fist class with only lightning attributes added. In other words, it is still very weak. Especially in the original work, neither of them awakened their 7th sense, and they could only play soy sauce, pretend to be waving flags and shouting, and become cheerleaders. But now, under the guidance of Shaga, the 2 of them who have awakened their 7th sense, these moves are even less effective. Even if it is purely a physical attack, the previous generation of Taurus Hazegat's Giant Horn Titan Nova achieved the ultimate speed and power, while Ioria's Lightspeed Fist also added the destructive power of plasma. These attacks are simple but not simple. Compared to the complex moves of Magic Bell and Sarna, when thrown aside, there is nothing outstanding, nothing worthy of praise, or even the ultimate achievement. As for Meteor Fist, pull it down, do you think you are a Pegasus with no goddesses to cheat on? If it's true record, which time did Pegasus really rely on Meteor Fist to defeat opponents? Except for the same 2 purple dragons, it can be said that every time they were abused to death and then found a goddess to cheat and explode, inexplicably defeating their opponents. Nowadays, the inherited battle skill, falcon hunting, obtained by Magic Bell is a real golden battle skill, and belongs to the advanced spiritual attack of Phantom Fist. Unlike previous illusion techniques, the Demon Eagle hunting is an advanced golden combat technique that is no less than Phoenix Illusion Fist. As long as the Demon Bell uses this move, a huge Sky Eagle phantom shadow will appear behind him, and the opponent will feel as if they are being stared at by a huge eagle eye, their breath is completely locked, and they cannot avoid or escape. But as long as you see the eyes of the Magic Bell or the eagle's shadow, you will be hit. Even if you don't look at the eyes of the Magic Bell, as long as you are punched, you will still be hit. The victim will feel that they are experiencing their most terrifying way of death, and their brain will fall into the hypnosis of their own death, causing the victim to truly die. Even if they don't die, the damage caused by that way of death will be hypnotized by their brain and truly appear on their body. It can be said that making a person's body believe they are dead is completely a deadly attack under the 8th sense. Another move, eagle wings soaring into the sky, although only similar to phoenix wings soaring in the sky, adds a wind attribute to the small universe of Magic Bell. With this, Magic Bell can completely elevate its ultimate move to the level of golden combat skills, becoming the strongest eagle saint since the mythological era. As for Sarna, her combat skills have not increased much, only obtaining a technique called Snake Decay Transformation, which can burn the small universe to help heal any damage to herself or others. It can be said that as long as she does not die, she can recover. What an incredible skill! Shaga sighed in her heart. However, Sarna's words surprised Shaga and the Magic Bell, and they only heard her say, "Shaga, I feel like I have another Ophiuchus holy robe, and it seems like I can summon it at any time." "Wait, Sarna, that holy robe is not yet when you summon it, otherwise the 3 of us may be enemies with the entire holy domain." Shajia hurriedly said to Sarna, looking at the puzzled Sarna and the Magic Bell. Shajia continued to explain, "I don't know much about the specifics, and the holy garment you sensed should be the 13th golden holy garment, the hidden zodiac constellation between Scorpio and Sagittarius." Ophiuchus. Magic Bell said, somewhat puzzled, "Since Ophiuchus is the golden cloak, why can't it be summoned, and why would it become enemies with the entire holy domain if summoned?" Sarna was equally puzzled. Shaga said somewhat helplessly, "That sacred garment is the core seal of an ancient god sealed by the legendary Ophiuchus at the cost of his soul. If a new Ophiuchus golden saint is born and wears that Ophiuchus golden holy garment, that ancient god may be unsealed from the seal. And that holy garment has now been sealed by Athena, and there is also some inexplicable will on it. When influenced by some inexplicable will, Sarna may no longer be Sarna. However, the legends of Saint Seiya are specially shaped by those with a heart, and no one knows what the truth is then." Looking at the somewhat confused Sarna and the Magic Bell, fate communication opened, and Shaga suddenly laughed. The Magic Bell and Sarna were inexplicably strange, and Shaga said, "Sarna doesn't have to worry too much about that sacred garment. Your current holy garment has reached the level of a golden holy garment. The holy garment resurrected through my Shaga's blood is already at the level of a golden holy garment, not close to gold." Looking at the slightly confused Magic Bell and Sarna, Shaga said, "Take a look at your holy clothes. If the holy clothes were resurrected from the blood of other golden saints, it would only make them close to gold, but I, Shaga, am different." Seeing the curious eyes of Sarna and Magic Bell, Shaga smiled slightly. The small universe had reached its limit within its body, but there was no leakage of breath. In the shocked eyes of Magic Bell and Sarna, Shaga appeared with a holy robe that she had never seen before, similar to the golden robe of Virgo, but even more sacred. The coverage of the holy robe. It's like a deity wearing. This is the sacred garment of the gods, which is said to have been resurrected from the blood of gods. As the small universe burns to its limit, it will evolve and awaken into the sacred garment of the gods. This is also a proof that holy warriors can fight against gods. Immediately, Shaga converged the small universe and the holy robe on his body disappeared. This is? Sarna asked curiously. Shajia chuckled and reached out to hold the magic bell. With the other hand, she pulled over Sarna and walked towards the flower bed together. Under the urgent gaze of the two, Shajia continued to say. My holy robe has not been resurrected by divine blood, so I have not received the holy robe either. However, my small universe has long surpassed gold and reached a state close to the gods. The holy robe just now was just derived from the small universe and transformed. Although Shajia's tone was very casual, even a bit light-hearted, they could truly feel the sacred sense of the divine robe on Shajia's body just now. Magic Bell and Sarna believed that it was not as simple as a phantom. Looking at Shajia, who was already sitting under the swaying trees, Magic Bell couldn't help but murmur to himself, the man closest to God. Upon hearing the words of the Magic Bell, Sarna also murmured and nodded, staring blankly at Shaga. Feeling the confusion of the two women, Shajia stood up and hugged them in her arms, whispering, I'm not the closest man to God, that's the enemy's words. By your side, I'm just your man, that's all. Magic Bell and Sarna placed their jaws on Shaga's shoulder, dancing with the petals of the two garden flowers, as if the entire flower garden was singing and praising for the three of them. Shajia felt that the two women's emotions had calmed down and their confused hearts had become firm. Shajia smiled lightly and said to the two women, my blood contains my own spirituality. Even in critical moments, I can use this blood to manifest and help you fight. And the inheritance you have received is not from the holy clothes, but from the combination of my spirituality and your zodiac signs, and over time, your ultimate moves will become more and more sublimated, becoming more and more perfect, even approaching my heavenly dance wheel. Through destiny, Shaga learned about the true nature of the holy clothes inheritance. She explained the saint's ultimate moves to the two women, and even used the star destiny points of Aquila and Ophiuchus to demonstrate their ultimate moves. However, the same move was in Shaga's hands, and the mystery was infinitely magnified. Not to mention the magic eagle hunting technique of the magic bell, which is also a top skill in golden warfare. Even Sarna's thundering claw was evolved into the top golden combat technique, thunder snake heavenly punishment, by Shaga. Shaga's right hand was raised as a claw, and the sky and earth became dark in an instant. The magic bell and Sarna were instantly paralyzed like electric shock, unable to move due to being suppressed by heavenly power. They could only watch as Shaga's paw transformed into a huge thunder snake and descended from the sky. Of course, just as the thunder snake was about to hit the two women, everything changed back to its original state. Among the golden saints, it seemed that only Shaga could handle such attacks with ease. In the shock of the two women, the message of thunder serpent punishment suddenly came from Sarna's sacred robe. It turned out that Sargar's use of the technique evolved from the Ophiuchus star's destiny point resonated with the spirituality of Sarna's blood in her holy robe, and the spirituality also gave rise to this technique of thunder serpent punishment. Watching the two women sparring their ultimate moves back and forth, Saga was pondering the matter of the Ophiuchus golden cloak in her heart. The speculation about the Ophiuchus golden cloak in the past life is very chaotic online, because the authors of the two Hades mythological comics are not the same person. Although they both talk about the previous generation of Holy War 243 years ago, the identity and plot of the Golden Saint are different, except for a few protagonists. But even for the same person, the story experiences are different. However, the only similarity is that only Cheyenne and Tonghu survived the previous Holy War. According to the information revealed by Tonghu, the Pope, and Pandora's sister today, the previous Holy War in this world should have been in the time and space of Yabafika and Nashmida. However, in the future, Athena will not let the god of time help cross that time and space, but parallel dimensions synchronized with that time and space. The law of causality in time and space is already unchanging, the small situation is reversible, so as long as only Cheyenne and Tong who survive in the previous Holy War, other details that do not affect time and space causality are irrelevant, even if the Golden Saint is different. The master of the Ren, Ji, Yong, heavenly horse and the previous generation of Sagittarius have the same evaluation. No, this generation of Sagittarius is also the same, so it is already dead, no one knows, and still knows medical skills. By the way, the only person who meets these conditions is. But no matter what, I won't let you hurt Sarna. Shajia firmly pinched the Buddha beads and smiled at the two women. Chapter 9. Candidates for the Pope. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is the third year that Shaga has come to the Holy Land. In the original work, Athena arrived this year, and Pope Leon has already revealed his intention to choose a successor. The candidates are also the same as in the original work, Sacca and Ioros. However, when chatting with the Golden Saints in private, Shaga always casually said to the Golden Saints, compared to the Sagittarius Aeolus, who is benevolent, wise, and brave, Sacca, who is very powerful in heart, skill, and body, is more suitable to lead us in battle with the gods. Although Shajia's words were light and no one took them seriously, they were all clear in his heart. Although Shaga's words reached the ears of Aeolus and Aeolia, they did not pay much attention. After all, even in front of Pope Shaun and his teacher Tong Hu, Shaga could say such heinous words as whether the goddess Athena was worthy of his loyalty. Moreover, during the 3 years of fighting against some evil gods, Shajia has helped the two of them countless times. He even brought Aoria back from Sacca in the underworld. When fighting against some evil gods, Shajia actually called those evil gods monkeys in the palm of the Buddha. The two of them have long been accustomed to Shajia's casual behavior. However, Pope Shaun is different from the two of them, the great AI and the little AI. Although Shaun also has to admit that the Gemini Saga is much stronger than Aeolus, Saga is too decisive in his actions, and his strength is also very strong. Known as the incarnation of God, Saga is also loved by everyone in the Holy Domain, and it seems that all saints and sagas have good relationships. But how much loyalty does Sacca have to the goddess Athena? Although Sacca no longer has the evil and crazy small universe, the small universe that used to be even purer than angels has also disappeared. There is no ultimate good or evil, but instead it has become similar in nature to an ordinary golden saint, warm and majestic. But unlike the Virgo zodiac sign, the Virgo zodiac sign of Buddha's reincarnation does not have any ambitions, but Gemini. His Majesty the Pope, the adults of the Golden Saints are waiting outside the temple. The voice of the waiters outside interrupted the Pope's thoughts. Cheyenne walked to the papal hall and looked at the young Golden Saints who were paying their respects. Cheyenne sat on the Pope's chair and solemnly said, "Next month, the goddess will be reincarnated in the Holy Domain. Starting today, the 12 palaces are under martial law and no one is allowed to enter." "Yes, Your Majesty the Pope, rest assured," all the Golden Saints replied together. However, the Pope still saw from the faces of some Golden Saints that he didn't take it seriously, seemingly indifferent to whether there were enemies attacking. Cheyenne couldn't help but feel a headache. Is this a confidence in his own strength, or does he think that Athena's life and death have nothing to do with him? "Your Majesty the Pope, although I, Shaga, cannot assure you of my loyalty to Athena because I have never had contact with her, and I do not know if she represents love and justice as you said, it is my responsibility to guard the palace and eliminate enemies who invade the Holy Domain. The palace will not allow any enemies to pass through. We are the same, we won't let any enemy pass through." The other Golden Saints burned the small universe together with Shaga, but Garonne next to Shaga felt a bit uncomfortable. He looked at others shining with gold, but he was wearing cloth clothes, which made him feel uncomfortable. Shaga saw Garonne like this and spoke to him through the microcosm, saying, "In the water prison of the Slyo Strait, perhaps you can get your chance there." Nowadays, the golden people are not very old. The younger ones like Iolia, Mu, Shaga, etc. are only 7 or 8 years old, while the older ones like Arutaba, Ioros, etc. are only 13 or 14 years old. The only ones who are close to adulthood are Sacca and Garonne, who are 17 or 18 years old. However, their height is similar. It should be noted that Shaga is a person who can walk and speak from birth, and like Shakyamuni, he even said, "I am the only one in heaven and earth." Although other gold may not have as much origin as Saga, how can its development slow down after being baptized by the gold universe? Although a few people still have tender faces, most of them are from the West and have taken on the appearance of adults. Only Shajia, due to the assimilation of the primordial spirit, has a face that looks somewhat like that of a middle school student compared to the faces of Easterners. But no one would underestimate such a Shajia. In the afternoon, Garonne, who had arrived outside the holy domain with Sacca, suddenly said to Sacca, "Sacca, we really need to be loyal to Athena and obey a woman's command. Why don't we kill the Pope and the upcoming goddess and rule the holy domain ourselves?" Unlike the original work, Sacca was not angry. Instead, he smiled slightly and said lightly, "Gelong, you are still immature." What? Garonne was taken aback by Sacca's words, but Sacca didn't pay much attention. He turned around and walked towards the Holy Land, saying to Garonne, "Garonne, go to the prison in the Slio Strait to reflect on yourself. When will you figure it out? When will you come out again?" Ignoring the stunned Garonne, he walked straight towards the Holy Land. Garonne, who was standing still, came to his senses and didn't understand what Sacca was saying. However, he became interested in the prison in the Slio Strait that Sacca had just mentioned. It seems that Sacca had also mentioned it in the papal palace, saying that he would have some opportunities there and would go see it if he had the chance in the future. Gelong, let's not mention it for the time being, but Shajia is enjoying a beautiful afternoon tea with Mo Ling and Sarna in the Twin Trees garden of the women's palace. Occasionally, she tells a joke to tease the two women, but then Mo Ling suddenly says, "Shajia, you seem to be becoming more and more human." Sarna was a bit confused and said, "Magic Bell, what are you talking about?" Of course Shaga is human. Understanding the meaning of Magic Bell, Shaga smiled slightly and deliberately asked, "What's wrong? Have I changed?" Mo Ling said somewhat embarrassed, No, although Shajia's temperament and personality are still the same as before, but compared to the kind when we first met. How can we say it? The feeling of being sacred and aloof, although warm, now Shajia is even more approachable. Sarna also reacted and said, "Yes, that's the feeling, but it's still better now." Hugging the two women, Shajia smiled and said, "The man closest to God, the incarnation of Buddha, and the strongest golden saint. These halos are just a means to confront the enemy. By your side, I am just me, just your lover." The three of Saga leisurely enjoyed afternoon tea together, but Pope Shaun summoned Sacca and Aeolus to the papal palace. Shaun said to the two, "I have decided to choose one of you to succeed as pope. In the evening, I will inform you of my decision." Sacca and Aeolus left the imperial palace, and Aeolus was full of confidence. Sacca closed her eyes and smiled, but as she left the Sagittarius palace, Sacca quietly waved her hand at Aeolus and walked towards the Gemini palace. In the evening, Pope Leon was still unable to decide who would be the current candidate for the teaching throne. When he saw Sacca and Ioros walking in, Sacca remained unchanged and smiled calmly as before. However, Ioros was full of excitement and seemed confident. Upon seeing this, Cheyenne nodded. Suddenly, Cheyenne saw a very imperceptible trace in Ioros's eyes. Crazy. Upon closer examination, it was not an illusion that Shirong had disappeared. As a former Aries golden saint, guarding the first palace of the 12 zodiac signs, he was undoubtedly the most agile among the 12 golden saints. Thinking of Shaga's statement that compared to the Sagittarius Zyros, who is known for his strong mental and physical abilities, Sacca is more suitable to lead them in battle with the gods. I seem to understand something in my heart. Did Saga from the female zodiac sign, the man closest to God, notice it from the beginning? With this in mind, Cheyenne spoke up and said, Sacca, who has the heart, skills, body, virtue, and bravery, the Gemini Golden Saint takes over the position of Pope, and the Sagittarius Ioros, you should assist Sacca well from the side. Nanny. It's impossible, why didn't you choose me? Ioros suddenly shouted out of control. Cheyenne looked at Ioros, who had lost his composure, and shook his head in his heart. Step back, I will announce it to the Golden Saints. After the arrival of the goddess Sacca, you will begin to succeed. Sacca and the lost Aeolus returned to their respective palaces. Soon, the Golden Saints received a message from the Pope, understanding that the next Pope would be Sacca. Dismusk looked at Pope Leon with a strange smile and said, He, Your Excellency the Pope is indeed wise. It seems that you are not old and foolish yet. You should be able to work for a few more years. Although the last sentence was very quiet, could the Golden Saints present not hear it? Xiang was also a bit puzzled, but he wasn't angry because he seemed to see the equally unscrupulous Cancer Manigoth from the previous generation in Dismusk. After seeing the Golden Saints all return, Xiang began to communicate with Tong Hu on the 5 old peaks of Mount Lu using the small universe. Xiang recounted the process of choosing the Pope, and Tong Hu sighed and said, So now Sacca is your heir. Ah. The saying, purity is also pollution, don't the Pope and the teacher understand? Suddenly, a small universe intervened into their conversation. Cheyenne and Tong Hu were surprised and didn't expect someone to intervene without their noticing. Cheyenne snapped back and said, So, Shaga, what do you think? Shaga said, I believe both the Pope and the teacher understand that Aeolus can be said to be the most loyal saint of Athena, and he himself also thinks so. Sensing the nods of Cheyenne and Tong Hu, Shaga continued, however, Aeolus' loyalty to the goddess is already too great. Chapter 10. Goddess's Descent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Too much. Shirong and Tong Hu pondered. I only heard Shaga say, everything must be measured, and things will turn around when they reach the extreme. I believe in Aeolus' loyalty to the goddess Athena, but his loyalty has reached a crazy level. I'm afraid he won't believe anyone else is more loyal to Athena than himself. Thinking of Ioros's madness, Cheyenne sighed softly, perhaps what you're saying is right. Your Highness, perhaps Aeolus will snatch away the goddess after her arrival, perhaps. Then Shaga stopped speaking, but his words shocked Leon and Tong Hu. After a long silence, Tong Hu spoke up, Friend, if it's really what Shajia said, what should you do? Cheyenne didn't know how to answer, but after a while, the child tiger suddenly spoke up and said, Old friend, let Sacca be the Pope, and leave the goddess to Aeolus. Cheyenne remained silent for a while, nodded. In the swaying twin trees garden, Shajia suddenly opened his eyes and said softly with a smile, Is the illusionary misty demon Emperor Fist. It's not about controlling, but amplifying his obsession, a good means. Close your eyes again, and Saga continues to meditate. Shaga was not averse to Sacca's use of means to compete for the position of Pope. Instead, he believed that Sacca was right. In the past, emperors of ancient China, all-wise lords, were extraordinary in their means. The competition for papal candidates was too trivial. For Aeolus, Shaga believed that he was not a pope at all, and that he could not even break Sacca's little tricks. How to lead the holy warriors against the gods. Shajia, the weather is nice today, but the atmosphere in the Holy Land is strange. Sarna asked Shajia in the palace. The magic bell next to him also nodded. Suddenly, Shajia opened his eyes and said, Magic bell, Sarna, you go back to the twin trees garden. Today is the day Athena is born, and I'm afraid the Holy Land has begun to be unstable. Magic Bell and Sarna looked at Shaga in shock, but Shaga waved his hand and teleported them to the twin trees garden. I didn't expect some young people to sneak in today. It seems that the previous palaces were already in a state of war. Humph. The demon has subdued. Sitting cross-legged, Shajia took a light sip and arched her palms in front of her chest. Immediately, the small universe condensed between her palms, and her body floated up into the air. As Shajia stretched her limbs, the Buddha's light illuminated the entire female palace. Ah 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 ah. With a scream of agony, all the enemies who had illegally crossed the palace disappeared. Shajia stood up and whispered, "Rat, haven't you appeared yet?" His hand print was lightly nodded, and the Buddha light on his body shone towards a void outside the palace. I didn't expect there to be such a powerful warrior as you among the young saints, but I, Lord Cain, didn't have time to pay attention to you. I am loyal to you, and my blood emperor can make you a great blood clan, allowing you to enjoy an immortal body. Watching Xingshan wearing armor that looked a bit like a mouse, with huge black metal bat wings behind him, although it was a black holy robe, it gave people a feeling of bloodshed. Cain and the 13 surnames bloodline. It doesn't look like a bat, but rather like wearing a bat-shaped holy coat. By the way, this is the world of holy warriors, and the holy coat is the mainstream. Shaga looked at Cain and the 3 black shadows behind him, feeling the domineering little universe of the Gemini palace, as well as the 4 dying evil auras. He also felt the small universe of Aeolia, who was fighting against the 2 evil auras. Mu and Arutaba had already tied up the battle and continued to guard the palace. In the Cancer Palace, Dismarsk seemed to be having a lot of fun. Although the flesh of the Blood clan was strong, Dismarsk's accumulated corpse aura targeted the soul. Well, it's time to end. By the way, it seems like I've heard of it in my past life. Cain seems to have a few treasures, and after looking at the equipment on Cain's body, it turns out that this item is destined for me and should be my possession. After thinking about it, Shaga spoke up and said, "Cain, you have a connection with my Buddha. Let me send you to the Western Paradise." The items on your body are actually unknown, so let me purify them with Buddhist teachings. Cain and the 3 blood warriors behind him couldn't help but have black lines on their heads when they heard Shaga's words, and Cain vaguely remembered the phrase from a great Buddhist expert that this thing is related to me. He shivered all over and calmed down. Cain said, "Don't worry, I came today to drink Athena's blood. If I don't move away, I will kill you first." With a flutter of his wings, Cain and his 3 blood fighters charged toward Shaga, while countless bats appeared to hide them. Demon subdues. Shajia drank lightly, and in an instant, all the bats turned into nothing. However, Cain and his 3 blood fighters were about to rush out of the palace. However, Shajia ignored them and sat up in place, fighting. If anyone were to watch at this moment, they would notice that Cain and his 4 companions were clearly flying forward but inexplicably flew backwards, returning to their original position and starting to spin non-stop. Allah, what's going on? I feel like we've been flying for several hours, how could we not have flown to the next palace yet? A blood fighter asked Cain. Cain stopped and looked around, suddenly exclaiming with his subordinates, This is on the palm of the Buddha. I saw a huge golden Buddha statue standing behind them, and they were standing on the palm of the Buddha. No matter how they flew or ran, they could not escape the Buddha's palm. At this moment, Shajia's voice came. As I said, you are destined with the Buddha. Let me take you on a journey, the 6 reincarnations. In an instant, the golden Buddha statue bloomed, and Cain and 3 blood warriors were pushed into the 6 realms. After a while, Cain, covered in blood, appeared in place, and his 3 subordinates had completely fallen into the 6 paths. Damn it! Goddess, how dare you make the great Allah Cain bleed? Use your and Athena's blood to make up for it, donate your blood. Goddess, see the greatest mystery of Cain, the holy communion of the blood emperor. I saw countless vampires rushing towards Shaga in the sky, and Shaga's hand print lightly nodded and he let out a soft drink, don't move Ming Wang. The spiral golden shield appeared around Shaga, and all attacks were bounced back. All illusions in the sky disappeared, leaving only Shaga standing and Cain constantly breathing. After a moment of silence, Shaga said, "Do you want my blood?" Cain suddenly roared, "Damn it, Virgo, I want to suck you dry." "Then I'll give it to you," Shajia suddenly laughed. I saw Shaga lightly flick his right middle finger on his thumb, and a drop of blood hit Cain, but Cain didn't see it that way. In Cain's eyes, the blood of Shaga bullet on his body was like a Buddhist relic attached to him. Cain's body was instantly enveloped by the golden Buddha statue released by the relic, and all his energy and all the small universe were purified by the Buddha statue. No, even his own will was being purified. Ah 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 ah. With Cain's shrill cry, Cain's body gradually turned grey, and the body, including the essence of the soul, was used by Shajia to baptize Cain's holy clothes. So, let's turn the last part into raw materials. With the burning of the Shaga universe, Cain's holy robe, should be called the blood god clothes. Although it is far inferior to the true god clothes, it is also similar to what Susannabu wears. Looking at the metal blocks that had turned back from the blood god clothes on the ground, there were still 2 fangs, a ring, a cloak, and a cloak left. Upon closer inspection, Shajia noticed that these things were similar to the skeleton grass-shaving sword of the demon beast, and seemed to be from its body. That ring is quite good, it can release various negative things, such as weakness, fatigue, aging, poisoning, paralysis, chaos, and so on, causing people to fall into a negative state. Completely erase the remaining willpower in these things, and Shajia will store them in the ring space for future use. After killing Cain, Shaga returned to the palace and continued to meditate on the lotus platform. Suddenly, a small universe filled with sunshine, tenderness, tolerance, warmth, and strength came from the goddess's palace. However, in this small universe, Shaga seemed to see firm beliefs, infinite fighting spirit, and infinite warfare. Wow! Shaga instantly opened her eyes and murmured to herself, "Athena, why is your war-torn universe burning?" However, those who can see through the essence of Athena's microcosm are probably the only ancient martial arts practitioners in this world who have been able to have a clear mind and insight in their past lives. Gemini in the palace, Sacca murmured, "This is truly a great microcosm. Perhaps loyalty to such a goddess is the right path." Aries Palace, Taurus Palace. It seems that everyone in the holy domain is immersed in Athena's gentle and powerful small universe. However, in the Sagittarius Palace, Iris was completely destroyed by the arrival of the goddess. As Iris rushed towards the palace, he whispered, "Great goddess, I, Ioros, will spare no effort to protect you. I, Ioros, am the qualified pope, your most loyal warrior, and only I can protect you well." Perhaps sensing something was amiss in the holy realm, Athena's microcosm prompted the goat golden cloak to give Shura a hint. Shura was surprised and secretly said, "Athena, do you realize that someone is trying to harm you and is seeking help like the most loyal warrior of my goat goddesses throughout history? Don't worry, goddess, I, the goat goddess Shura, will protect you with my life." As he spoke, a holy sword struck out and charged towards the papal palace. In the imperial palace, Cheyenne was facing Ioros, who suddenly broke in and took the goddess away. He only heard Ioros say, "Pope, only I Ioros is the most loyal warrior of the goddess. Why didn't you choose me as the pope? Only I Ioros can protect the goddess Athena, don't stop me, lightning photon fist."